General. Every week we bring you tactical tips, guns and gear review, and some political commentary every now and again. So both of us are certified instructors, firearms instructors. I'm a military vet.
And I'm a private security contractor.
So we have a fair amount of experience between the two of us to bring to you, and we try to take that knowledge and experience and bring it to you in a way that no one else does here in this area. So we think it's important that we bring to you knowledge of firearms and tactical things, and just bring that to you in a way that is both fun and entertaining and knowledgeable.
That's what we're trying to do here. Where we left off last week was with the French pistol, the 20-shot revolver.
And just to catch you up, just in case you weren't here, last week we started part one of a two-part series on the evolution of the modern firearm. We started in the late 1300s, and we ended up in the late 1800s. Now we're doing 1800s to modern day. So we're going to zoom in on this book here. Wait, there we go.
And that was the pistol that we left off on last week.
So this was we use French, right?
Yeah, it's French.
20-shot revolver.
Pinfire.
This was late 1800s. And the French, Evan and I talked about this off camera a little bit about how a lot of the advancements in firearms actually came from Europe. And they were implemented in the United States. And the reason is because in the United States, these guns were used for life and death. They weren't necessarily used as showpieces. We were in the middle of the Civil War. After the Civil War, it was the Wild West, so there was a whole lot of stuff going on there. Whereas in Europe, and a lot of these European countries that have been established for quite some time, you started to have revolutions after our revolution, But for the most part, when these firearms were created, they were created and designed to be ornate, to be
work of art.
They were pieces of art. So, but through that art, we have some huge advancements.
Oh, big
in
time!
The firearm.
Big time. The pinfire is remarkable. How from the pinfire we got our centerfire.
Right. Yep.
It came across the pond to us, and then they were like, okay, guys like Winchester and Henry didn't even get together. They were making rimfire cartridges.
Right.
It wasn't until the 4440 came out that you had a centerfire cartridge.
Right. Yeah. So, so that jumps us out of what was called, I would consider, the antique firearm era, and it brings us into what I consider to be the modern firearm era. And so one of the big advancements in the modern firearm era was the invention of smokeless powder. What's smokeless powder? It's exactly what you think it is. It's powder that doesn't smoke when you shoot it. One of the big advantages, the biggest advantage and the reason why they invented it or it came about was so that they could shoot their rifles and the enemy didn't know where they were shooting from. So that was the big reason, but it had some different, I guess, side effects, some things that they were able to use this smokeless powder for that was better for the cartridges.
Longer range char cartridges. I want to touch base, since you're talking about smokeless powder. I did a little research here last night. The cartridges that are still around from that day is a 38 Colt, 3855, 303 Brit, 45 Long Colt, 4570 Government, 4440, 44 Special, 3030, and the 7.62 by 54 Russian. So those are the cartridges that translated from black powder to smokeless.
Which all were created in the late 1800s, right?
Late 1800s, yeah. I mean, 303 and the 450, 577 Martini Henry was in the Boer War, which was black powder. And then some of those actually went and was rechambered for the 303 in black powder. And then infield got together and they made.
Paul and Peter, right? Is that
Yeah,
Paul and
yeah,
Peter?
Potter Peter, yeah. And then next thing you know, it just went smokeless from there, from the 30-40 Crag,
Right.
you know.
So
But
what it allowed to do, though, it allowed to shoot a smaller bullet faster. Okay,
Yep.
basically.
higher
So-
pressure, higher chamber pressure.
And the nice thing about that then is we didn't need these big 50 caliber balls to shoot. They were able to make rounds like the 22 caliber that were able to travel just as far and were just as powerful as some of these bigger rounds. Now, we're not gonna get into a debate about the efficacy of different round sizes and all, but the point is when this smokeless powder was created, they were able to put it into a cartridge and shoot a smaller bullet and be just as effective in the firearm.
And these firearms that I have on this page are Theodore Roosevelt's firearms, and they're all smokeless powder. But what I wanted you to represent is the fact that these guns are from the turn of the century. These things are built with smokeless powder prior to 1900s.
Right.
You know, these are what these are. And then over here you got the big medicine rifles and in your 40 Crag, and also your 405 Winchester.
Okay.
Another area I want to touch on, just out of this book real quick, is big game guns. How that changed. You got away from the 2-bore, the 4-bore, and 8-bore, which were just massive black powder cartridges. Yeah. And they had low ballistics, but they were designed as stopping rifles.
Right.
Okay, now we're going straight into, hold on here just for a sec. I got it marked. I promise you I got it marked this time. Bear with me, folks. I got the Rigabys here. Okay, these big double rifle Mauser action, bolt action rifles. These, the 416 Rigabee is like the 270 and 30-06 here as far as big game rifles go in Africa.
Sure, yeah.
So you have the onslaught of these smaller bullets. The Nitro Expresses started coming on,
Yep.
which are the Magnum calibers of the 1900s. This is something that, yeah, true, we had some pretty big Nitro Expresses come along for the last few years, but here we go, prime example, John Rigabee rifle, 505 Gibbs. All these rifles are turn of the century smokeless powder.
Yeah, yeah. So smokeless powder was a huge advancement in firearms in general. Really was the catalyst for the modern day firearm. So after smokeless powder was created, we have the early autoloaders. So the first autoloading pistol designs were German made, the Schoenberger and Borchardt.
Yep.
They were in 1893 and 94. And then a couple years later, in 1896, Mauser firm began to manufacture the first auto pistol to gain widespread acceptance, which is the model 1896.
Yeah, otherwise known as broom handle.
That's it. So, and then that's what your Nazi Luger was designed off of.
Well, actually, the Luger was designed off the Borchardt.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But a very famous British leader had a C96 that saved his bacon in the Boer War, and that was Churchill.
Right.
He carried the C96. So.
Now the Borchardt was the first handgun it was the first autoloader, a semi-auto that actually used a magazine. So
yeah, it was a detachable mag. So
that was pretty big. Prior to that, they loaded into a chamber.
I wanted to touch on a couple of guns here. the company that helped do what we did, FN. Little infamous history here. It was the FN M1910 that was used by Gavrilo Principal to assassinate Archduke Ferdinand. Okay, so it was this pistol right here,
which was the start
of the World War One.
Right.
So you had a little bit of, here we are, same company that makes my loaded handgun, my carry gun. I'll let you get the carry gun on film. Makes this gun right here. This is what I carry. Same company. Over 100 years. Yeah. And here it is. And it's on our hats. And they've been around for 120 something years. Right. Yeah, so guys, we thank FN. I know FN did not want to get hit with this, but it is what it is. This is history. So I felt like it was honest to mention FN. And also, I want to touch on the Savage P07. For many years, I was saying the Belgian Browning High Power was the first double stack high capacity pistol out there. And guess what, guys? I was sadly mistaken. To actually fall into that category, it was the Savage 1907. 32 caliber, hold a 10-round mag, box mag. And never knew it. I just found that out today. Yeah. So,
well, then in 1909, the famous 9mm Luger round was created. So, 9mm parabellum.
1905. Actually, it was 1905.
Are you sure?
Yeah, 1902. Actually, it's right here.
Huh.
Was
so
introduced.
We have some discrepancy on the actual date. Evan says 1902. My information says 1909, but it was in the early 1900s.
Yeah,
the first 10 years.
It don't matter. It don't matter.
But again, over 100 years here that the 9mm has been in circulation and been in use. So, so then we have last week we talked about the model 1892, the 1894 with the 3030 cartridge. And to jump back into Evan's point then about the hunting rifles, once we hit that era, the bolt action rifle, it's definitely evolved since that era, but the basic principle of how that bolt works has stayed the same for over 100 years.
Yes.
The plain your regular bolt rifles of today, not talking about sniper rifles, but your regular hunting rifles of today, basically same design, same bolt design, same function as the bolt rifles of the late 1800s. Mauser
action, infields. Right. You can go on and on. There for the long time, you could not hunt in Africa without a Mauser action. Yep. They wouldn't let you hunt. You had to have a Mauser action. So you have Mausers in a wide variety of calibers. Now, we talked about this before the show today. One of the biggest feats of the modern day bolt action rifle, I got to give my hats off to Mossberg. Mossberg came out with the MVP bolt action rifle, which is chambered in 5.56 or 7.62 .308, and it will accept a PMAG. At the same time that you're shooting, from a standard 5-round mag, you can drop that magazine, go straight to camp defense with it, put in 25 round mag of 308, and you could fight, you defend your base camp with that. So that there you go.
So later on, as we kind of advance through 1900s, we have a company that's very well known. It's Browning that made 2 revolutionary handguns. That again, and we're trying to focus a little bit on handguns just because a lot of the evolution of the modern day rifle and all kind of came from the advancements in handguns. But the 2 guns, everybody knows the one. The first one is the 1911, the most iconic handgun, other than maybe the Colt, but one of the most iconic handguns ever made is the 1911. Everybody knows what this is. Everybody's seen it.
And everybody makes one now.
Yep.
And I don't think Browning would ever think it would ever go this far.
And it was actually adopted right away in 1911 by the U.S. military, and it has been in use by the U.S. military and militaries around the world ever since. It is a fantastic design. As far as trigger pull goes, there is not a better trigger pull on the market. I mean, this is it. It's. Let's see. Let's go this way. Bam. I mean, it's nothing to it. Nothing to it whatsoever. This is one of the best, arguably, firearms ever made. So that was 1911, of course. That's why it's model 1911. But then soon after, they designed a handgun chambered in 9mm with a double-stacked magazine, okay, that is just as, I would say, just as effective and just as useful, or maybe even more so, some would argue. And it's, again, been the base model gun for so many modern-day handguns even, and it's the Browning High Power. Again, it's a gun that maybe not everybody would automatically would know what the Browning High Power is unless you are a gun enthusiast. But to be honest, there's so many weapons that were based today off
good
the Browning.
Lord.
Almost all of CZ's hammer-fired guns are based off the Browning High Power. I mean, like almost all hammer-fired guns are based off of the Browning High Power. Even the Beretta has its
CZ 75 is probably the most iconic.
Yes, one of the best handguns ever made.
Is probably the traditional. Here we go. There's a Browning right there.
So that was where we were able to get 13 rounds, as opposed to the 1911 7 rounds, and it's expanded from there. I mean, we have pistol magazines now that can take,
20 rounds,
30 magazines, but 19 plus 1.
Yeah,
standard
flush.
size.
Yeah, that's standard. Another gun that we're talking about auto loaders. One thing about the Browning High Power he forgot to mention is during World War II it was used on both sides.
Yeah.
British and Nazis both carried the high power because of its capacity. Another thing that was touched on the other day when Larry Vickers and Ian were talking about their new book, how German weapons of World War II, how at the beginning of World War II the M1 Garand was state of the art. By the time World War II was over, it was obsolete. Because of Sterngevir.
Yep.
And there again, the evolution of the semi-automatic rifle. What a lot of people don't realize is that M1 Garand was under development in the early 30s, 1930s.
Right, yeah.
And it wasn't adopted for the military until 40.
Yeah.
And it was originally called the gas trap.
Yep. So, in the, again, earlier part of the 1900s, 1917, Browning also produced the M2 Mod Deuce, which is again, still in use today. Still one of the most powerful, most effective machine guns.
And the gun and the people that we wear their hats are making it.
Yep.
This is the company that's making the Mod Deuce. And they're doing it not just the Mod Deuce, but the M249 Bravo, which goes back to the Browning 1917?
Yep.
And then you had the Browning BAR 1919.
Right, yep.
You had the Lewis gun, the Bren. All these guns were guns, to me, ahead of its time. I mean, the Browning BAR had a buffer spring in it.
Right. And the thing is these guns, they spanned one of the, I mean, not including like flintlock and matchlock weapons. I mean, those were a couple hundred years they were in use, but these firearms, we're talking about an era where we had advancements all over the place in industry, in technology.
Well,
and we had advancements in firearms, but these were weapons that were used for a huge period of American history.
Oh, good Lord.
And still are some.
I'm going to talk about a company that we haven't touched on, and that's Ruger.
Yeah.
Bill Ruger was not even 20, he was a little over 20 years old. He went to work for Springfield Armory, and he didn't have any kind of qualifications. The only thing he did was take an old Savage lever action 22 2000 rifle, turned it into 22 semi-automatic rimfire. You know, that was his. This is what I did. I took a lever action and turned it into semi-automatic.
Yeah.
You know, and then he went to work for Springfield, and after that, you know, right after World War II in the 50s, Sturm Ruger came about. So there you go.
Yeah, and then as we we use the same technology pretty much through the early 1900s, through World War II. We touched on the M1 Garand. You know, it was again an iconic firearm. But then the next kind of like step, I would say, you know, I think is the FNFAL and the H&K G3. These were just right on the cusp of the end of the Civil War.
World War II.
I mean, I'm sorry, yeah, Civil War. At the end of World War II, and then they were really kind of developed after World War II and put into production after.
Well,
World War II.
okay. We got 4 minutes. The HKG3 had a trunnion system. What machine gun did the Germans have that had a trunnion system? MG42, MG34. You know, one of the big stories that came out of World War II. General George S. Patton saved the Krieghoff family. Now, Krieghoff is not known for their battle rifles, but they did make the FG-42. You know, in World War II. Now, once they realized that, and he had to rescue them from the Soviets, they were able to keep their manufacturer. They make their double rifles, double barrel shotguns.
Yeah.
They make sporting rifles, big game guns, and I mean they're still making them today.
Yeah. Real quick, what do you think? Just kind of on the whim here. Continuing on and making this a 3-part series.
I think we'd have to.
Because I really do think that cramming the AK-47 and the M14
and Stoner.
Yeah, cramming all that into last.
You know, it's funny how 30 minutes goes. I mean, it's you know, guys. I want you to know I know you see 2 guys up here. And we're doing these videos, this, that, and the other. I want you to know this is not easy. This is work, people. And, you know, last week I came straight from the range, dropped guys off, dropped my cameraman off. We're going to have that video after the first of the year. I mean, there's a lot that we're doing.
A lot goes into it, yeah.
And a lot goes into it. So, guys, don't take this for granted. You know, this is a lot of research, a lot of time, a lot of midnight oil burnt. Yeah. I mean, I filled up a piece of scratch paper.
You can't read it, but he can.
Yeah. Well, I bounced all over the place. I mean, you know, it's sometimes ADD is a good thing.
Yeah. Hey, if you have something to focus on.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we'll do, folks. next week or maybe the week after, we got to play with the weeks, but we're going to continue this, and we're going to actually focus. I would like to focus a good 10-15 minutes on the AK-47.
Oh my God, yeah.
That is the next, just revolutionary.
Well, how many guns are based off the AK?
Still used today by hundreds of different military forces around the world.
SMLE.
Yep.
I mean, you go on and on.
So I think that's what we're going to do, guys. Bear with us on that. In a couple weeks, we are going to bring you a training video that we recorded. Evan had done a training, and we're going to go ahead. I got to do a little bit more editing on that, drop it down for you. So
I bet you do.
That way we can bring that to you and have a presentable video. We have some fireside chats with some friends and family that we're going to bring to you. And so it's going to be a good next good month or so. So we're down to about 30 seconds or so. If we're not going to see you before Christmas, so we want to wish you all a Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year.
From the Deplorable
General.
And
I'm Evan.
And I'm Andy.
Over and out.